I am very pleased to announce our keynote speaker. We are absolutely thrilled to have her here. I know you all know of her. And like I said, we're thrilled. Let me introduce with my pleasure, Lynda Weinman of lynda.com.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. Well, thank you all so much for inviting me. This is a real honor, and I have the utmost respect for the work that you're all doing in the field. I am going to talk about three things and a little bit about my career as a computer trainer, what went into the influences that created lynda.com, and the state of education today, which when I first got into my career, I didn't realize that I was walking into a landmine. And I'm sure that you all would agree that we're in very controversial times surrounding the field of education. Everything from the crushing student debt that's now topped credit card debt in our country, to the lack of graduates both in high schools and in college, to the horrible budget cuts that are just crushing many people's ability to go to college, crushing the budgets that you have in order to do your jobs, and a huge dialogue about whether education should be private or public, which never really used to be there. As well, I think to add insult to injury to all of that, the degree isn't necessarily guaranteeing the job anymore, and a lot of college graduates are either unemployed or underemployed. And so I think the truth of the matter is that the college degree is a euphemism. It is the promise that you can have a good life, that you can afford things, that you can maybe have a family, that you can maybe have a secure place to live. And while we've watched all kinds of things be transformed by the internet, the way we shop, the way we date, the way we communicate with each other, search, consume media, my favorite thing, the way we buy shoes. I don't think that yet education has been transformed to the degree that it probably will be at some point in time by the internet. And Mary Meeker is a venture capitalist with Kleiner Perkins, and every year she comes out with internet trends. What are the trendy thing? And education is trendy. Even though you guys are hounded by horrible budget cuts, terrible bureaucracy, lots of frustrations within your job, there's tons of money being raised around what a lot of people perceive to be the savior of education, ed tech, this new kind of word, ed tech. And so in her view, and in the view of many venture capitalists, education's at an inflection point. Even though we are the fourth largest spender in terms of countries in the world, that we're 27th in our rankings, that 71% of our college graduates have a debt of $30,000 or more dollars, that 1/3 of our college students do not feel that they were properly prepared for jobs, and that 1 out of 8 Americans believe that education is an important issue, despite all of these bad statistics. And I don't know how many of you have ever seen the Sir Ken Robinson talk on TED.com. It is the most popular talk of all times, and it's about how school is kind of stealing creativity from our students, harming them in terms of being creative thinkers. And probably most exciting to venture capitalists, that global education is a $4 trillion a year industry. So I kind of walked into all of this in a very innocent, unassuming manner. I wanted to talk a little bit, like I said, about my personal background and the influences that went into lynda.com. And I am going to be 60 in January, so I grew up in the 1950s. My parents got divorced, and I experienced a lot of trauma in my early childhood. My mother remarried someone who didn't want kids. My father left, then my mom remarried someone who didn't want kids. Then I lived with my grandparents who didn't want me and my brother and sister. And then we moved in with my dad and my stepmother who also didn't want us. So there was a lot of feeling of just not being wanted. Even though I had been a really good student in grade school, I actually skipped first grade, which kind of felt like a punishment because I thought my teacher liked me a lot, and then my teacher skipped me to another grade. and I didn't know any of the kids, and I didn't feel like, it was like hard to keep up. I met somebody last night in the elevator from the conference too who was saying he was skipped and that it was kind of a traumatic thing. But anyway, by the time I was in junior high, I was getting C's and D's. I really didn't care about school. I was in my head. I was dealing with a lot of emotional trauma that I had personally experienced. And I'm sure that a lot of the students that you get in the classroom have backgrounds for which you have no idea. They're coming to school hungry. They're coming to school with, they've been abused. There's been some sort of situation in their life that isn't clear from just how they look on the surface. And so when I was in junior high, I don't know how I got this book, and this really predates me because it was $1.95. We don't have books for $1.95 anymore. I read a book that's out of print today, but it was about this utopian school in the UK called Summerhill. And the premise of the school was that you didn't give grades, you didn't have prerequisites, you basically let kids have the choice of what they wanted to learn. You provided great teachers, great subjects, compelling classes. And the idea wasn't to make everybody good in every subject. It was to allow the kids to figure out what their personal passion was and foster a love of learning and a sense of self-motivation for learning. I thought, wow, that really sounds amazing to me. My parents were lower middle class. They could not afford to send me to England to go to school. But I found a local alternative high school. At the time, we had alternative high schools. This kind of during the hippie era. And I talked the headmaster into letting me go on my hot dog stand minimum wage income, which was $80 a month. And I ended up going to an alternative high school where we had lots of alternative kinds of classes, including one on feminism. Now, when I first heard of feminism, I thought what this means is a bunch of bra-burning, men-hating, angry women, and I am not one of those. I like men, I'm not angry, but what I learned when I started to read the feminist literature, things like Ms. Magazine and Betty Friedan's work, The Feminine Mystique, was that it wasn't about being angry, it was about the possibilities for women should be the same possibilities for anybody else. And so I had these two really pivotal kinds of ideas when I was very young. I was, 15, 16 years old. One, that I should be able to learn whatever I think is important for me to learn. And ultimately, hopefully, I'll find my passion, I'll figure out what I'm good at, and I'll like to learn, I'll like school again. The other pivotal idea that I don't have to limit myself to think about things that I can be, even though my mom didn't go to college, her mother didn't go to college. My mom's idea for me to go to college was so that I could meet a man so I could have a better life than she had, somebody who could earn more money than I could. So I also ended up going to an alternative college. I went to alternative high school, and then I went to Evergreen State College. And I think it's really interesting to read the expectations of an Evergreen grad, to articulate and assume responsibility for your work, to participate collaboratively and responsibly in our diverse society, to communicate creatively and effectively, to demonstrate integrative, independent, critical thinking, to apply qualitative, quantitative, and creative modes of inquiry appropriately to practical and theoretical problems across disciplines, and as a culmination of your education, demonstrate depth, breadth, and synthesis of learning, and the ability to reflect on the personal and social significance of that learning. Evergreen didn't give grades. My high school didn't give grades. At Evergreen, we had student evaluations, teacher evaluations. And that's really kind of similar to what happens in the working world. I'm almost 60. I've had many careers, many jobs. I've never once been asked what grade I got in a class. Never once even been asked to show my diploma. So I think some of the skills that I gained in this alternative education are really important skills that I see missing from the way that we're approaching education. So if I look at my career, it was just a bunch of different directions, different roads. Some of them succeeded, some of them didn't. But I think one of the things that I had instilled in me from this early childhood kind of education was that if I didn't like what I was doing, to change it, to just do something and try to keep searching for the thing that I would like. So my boyfriend came home in the early 1980s with one of these antiques, And he was really upset with me that I wasn't excited. And so to please him, I cracked open the manual, and I thought, who can learn from this? This is obviously not written for people. This is... but I just sort of tried things, and I convinced myself that I couldn't break it, and maybe because I just had this kind of inner confidence that I could learn new things, that I figured it out, and I was doing spreadsheets and word processing and all the early things that you did on Apple's, or on the personal computer when it was command line interface and, no color monitors. I mean, I also didn't touch this computer until I was 28 years old, which of course nobody could even dream that that'd be possible today. But I went to the bookstore to the computer store a couple years later to buy a ribbon, and I saw a Macintosh. And so I sat down and I tried it, and I was just absolutely mesmerized by how it worked and that it was visual and it was fun. I'd never used that adjective with, doing computer stuff, but I couldn't afford it, but I had a May Company credit card. So I put the Mac on my May Company credit card, and I paid 18% or 21% interest or whatever. And I was one of the very, very early adopters of the Mac. And at the time, I was working in the film industry, and I'd worked on some of these movies like Return of the Jedi and Tron. And I'd gotten these jobs because the same boyfriend had worked on Star Wars. And so he taught me how to use animation cameras and how to do animation. And I ended up moving beyond just working for him and working for a lot of other companies and on a lot of other projects and becoming pretty good at working in special effects. And I had a fairly good paying job at the time. I was proud of what I did, but it wasn't my passion. I liked it, I was good at it, but I still was sort of searching for what is the thing that I could own, not a career that someone else sort of handed to me. And around the time I worked on Star Trek V, and I'm in Wikipedia as one of the very first people who did this idea of pre-visualization, which was I went for an interview with Ralph Winter, who was the producer of Star Trek, and he wanted me to animate the scenes of the movie on the personal computer using, at the time, Macromind Director, which then became Macromedia Director. And so I somehow interviewed really well, and I got this assignment, and I ended up being the first person on a personal computer to animate the storyboards of a major motion picture. And it got the attention of Apple. It got the attention of Mac Week. I was asked to write articles. I was asked to speak at conferences, and it was kind of my first experience of something that I had done on my own that I was really proud of, that I enjoyed describing. And I realized that, I really like speaking. I really like teaching about stuff. I really like writing about stuff. And so working in the film industry is a really tough profession, especially if you have children. So this was my daughter. She'll be 25 this year. So this is a while ago. But you were expected, if someone handed you 20 new shots, you needed to stay up the next 48 hours and just do it. And being a mother, especially of a young child, really an impossible career. So the Star Trek work that I did got me a lot of attention, and I was invited to go and speak at Art Center College of Design, which is, for those of you who've never heard of it, is pretty much the Harvard of art colleges. And one of the things that they do is they hire working professionals who have industry credibility, not professional teachers. And so they loved my Star Trek work. I came and I gave them a lecture, and they invited me to come teach, initially part-time and ultimately full-time, where I taught motion graphics. I was After Effects expert. I taught digital imaging, so things like Photoshop, Illustrator, and Painter at the time. And one of my trademark ways that I would teach, I really remembered what it was like to not know anything. I remembered what it was like to try to decipher that horrible computer manual that I'd first seen, and I love to break things down into small-sized bites of information. And for me, it was just really fun to write these handouts and figure out the absolute best way to describe something. And what I found was when my students were watching me demo these programs, if they were writing notes, they completely missed what was the most important part, which was to see what I was doing. So I would say, I've written really good handouts for you. You have to promise me you're not going to take notes during my lecture because you have to watch. It's so important that you watch. And at the time, I was teaching a motion graphics class. And at Art Center, you had to wait for classes, and often people would camp out for the popular classes because there was a limit. You know, you had about 20 students in your class. And so my motion graphics class was kind of a pivotal class for all the different disciplines at Art Center. I had film students, I had students who were illustrators, students who were auto designers, but all of them thought, I can make a portfolio and make it move, and that would be pivotal to my career, to be able to have that fantastic ability to make things move. So I was really frustrated because I didn't like the fact that people were camping out, and so I pitched to the dean this idea, could I teach in an auditorium, and could I teach 100 people at a time, and have my teaching assistants go and work with the students one-on-one to do their projects? I would, ultimately we would do the reviews in front of the class, we would show the final projects, I would do all the lectures, but this way I can scale this class so that more students can take it, and fortunately he let me do it, and that was kind of a landmark idea at the time. So right around this time, I saw Mosaic for the first time. And, this is 1993, 1994. And I saw websites that all looked like this. They had gray backgrounds, black text, nothing formatted. Maybe you could center things. But I realized maybe earlier than a lot of other people that my art students were going to need to know how to do design on the web, because this was going to be the future way that brochures and business cards and all these other communications that they were responsible for designing were going to be delivered. So I went to a bookstore and I thought, I need a book to assign my students. I'm going to teach this. And I saw that the only books that were there were HTML. So in the bookstore, I decided, well, I know how to write curriculum. I know how to write. I've written articles for MacWeek and some of these other computer magazines. And maybe I love to research new things, teach myself new things. I'm going to teach myself this and write a book. So I pitched it to publishers, and I got rejected. They didn't really see my reasoning that people other than HTML programmers were going to want to learn how to publish to the web. So I convinced a magazine to let me write a series of articles, and this was how I got paid to come up with the lessons. How do you do a transparent image? How do you upload a movie? How do you make a movie? All those sorts of things that I wanted to teach, more the media around web publishing. And around that time, my articles were really popular, and someone wrote to me, and she was Debbie at Debbie.com. And she said, I went to the Wayback Machine. I don't know how many of you know about that, but you can go look at sites, what they looked like years and years ago. And so she had this call, like, I'm trying to get a list together of all the Debbies on the web. And sure enough, I'd gone to her site. I couldn't find this page, but there was a page with 12 links of the 12 Debbies that she could find on the web, right? So I thought, wow, I had never thought about getting my own name. I wonder if Lynda.com is available. And it was. I paid $35 for it. And I started Lynda.com, and everything was called a home page. So I made this sort of play on words that it was a home girl page. Also, people called things like girl power and stuff like that. It was very 1980s. But, I did things like girls just want to have fun. I don't know. And so, I learned how to do things like make a transparent image and change the color. And there is a patterned background in here. And I used it as my sandbox to teach myself web design while I was doing these magazine articles. And ultimately, I did get a book publisher. In fact, I had two that were fighting over me, because by the time I'd written all these articles, kind of made a little name for myself, people saw that more people than just programmers were going to want to learn how to do web publishing. So I submitted my manuscript. I got an amazing deal. I loved my publisher. And I wrote it in the same way that I'd written my materials, which were very personal. I would use the word I would tell stories. I would just really like to make people feel comfortable. My whole idea was, don't intimidate these students. They're not techies, but let them see the power of how important this medium is and get them excited about how to join in. So I wrote the manual in this way, and I wrote my book, and I got the manuscript back, and they had taken all the I voice out of it. They'd made it into the computer manuals that I hated. And I remember crying to my friend George Maestri, who's now a teacher on Lynda.com, because we were both writing books at the same time, him on 3D animation and me on web design, and we had the same publisher. And I said, they've ruined my book. I can't believe it, and I can't put my name to this. I can't let this be published. And he said, well, pull out the contract. And he showed me right in the contract how it said, if they reject your manuscript, you can get the intellectual property back and you can publish it with someone else. So I gathered up all my courage. I called my publisher. I said, I consider how you've edited my book to be a rejection. and I'm not going to publish it with you. And he said, whoa, 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 wait a second, I can fix this. He went back, he put it back in my voice. It was the first book ever to be published on this topic that was written sort of in a human way, in a really approachable manner. And much to their surprise and my surprise, this book became a national and an international bestseller. You know, very unlikely your very first book that you write to basically earn me personally hundreds of thousands of dollars in royalties. I'd always worked for every penny I'd ever made in my life. I had never experienced passive income. I suddenly had enough money to buy a house. I had enough money to move. My husband and I decided to move to Ojai, California, because we thought, oh, we just need the internet, and I can write books, and he was an illustrator, so all of his clients were everywhere anyway. We just need FedEx and an internet connection. And we're talking dial-up days. So it was very, very naive, but we did end up moving to Ojai. And I missed teaching like a hole in my heart, and I was also being asked to travel constantly because little did I know, I opened this with a landmine slide. Web design was sort of like the it discipline at that moment. It was the dot-com boom. I had the it book. I was the it person, the it expert. And people were asking me to go and speak in India and Singapore and all over the world. And I had a young child and I had a family, and it was really hard, as all the parents in the room know. It's super hard to juggle being a parent and a working professional. And so my husband had this idea, well, why don't we open a school in Ojai where we live and see if people will come to us? And sure enough, they did. It was unbelievable. We had marthastewart.com and llbean.com and the Vatican come. And it was unbelievable. We were sort of like, not only was it the it book at the it time on the it topic with the it teacher, but it still wasn't taught in community college. It wasn't taught in college, kind of really early to market, really agile, fast to market. Like, these are words that we now understand are so important. And we would write all of our materials, and it was the same sort of idea, really careful screenshots and, beautifully written, really approachable. And then in class, it was the same thing. Don't read your manual, don't take notes. This is experiential. I'm going to come around, look at your stuff. And this was me, and I think this is, I don't know when this was, but in the probably mid-90s, let's say. And so what started to happen was our classes sold out. And we started to get more demand than we had supply. So we started to hire other teachers. And a lot of them were my friends, because I'd been out on the speaking circuit and teaching at university level. And I knew a lot of experts in a lot of other fields. And so we started to bring in other teachers. This is Garrick Chow. He still teaches for lynda.com. And so the school was able to expand with people other than myself. And then I pitched to my book publisher, well, I want to write a book on Photoshop, about how Photoshop and the web work together. Oh, no, you can't do that. We have a different Photoshop expert. Because the way that publishing works, I kind of owned their web design space, but somebody else owned their Photoshop space, and somebody else owned their Flash space and all this stuff. So I thought, okay, well, I still want to publish on these topics, so we started to make VHS videos. And I literally edited them myself, and it was early days of Premiere, and you just would move the timeline, and the little spinny ball would spin, and I don't think I ever cursed as much as when I was editing these videos. And my husband did the covers, and we sold them. Our classes were $1,500 to come for a week-long workshop. Our videos were $150 a video. And I just realized, like, it doesn't matter. These are all just different mediums. I am a teacher. It doesn't matter if it's a DVD, a VHS, I'm standing at a podium, I'm writing a manual, writing a book. It's just all different form factors. The whole idea is to teach in this really approachable, accessible way and truly impart knowledge for people, not intimidate them, make sure that they're really learning. And so, some of the key influences that I've already talked about, Art Center, if you think about lynda.com and what lynda.com looks like, Art Center was working professional teachers. Lynda.com is all working professionals. With a video, you don't need notes. You watch. Very clear. You're watching, you're listening, you're experiencing. It's one to many, that sort of auditorium idea that I had. Well, little did I know it was going to be 1 to millions, not 1 to 100. The choices of teachers and topics, that's very Summerhillian. This idea that you trust people to come to your library, you trust in their understanding of what they want to learn. and that you can be anything, feminism. So all these influences I only told you about because they actually were the ingredients to building lynda.com. And then something happened. The dot-com crash, a very contentious election, a downturn in the economy, and 9/11. These things all happened within a very short period of each other. And no one wanted to come to a physical classroom anymore. And so we decided we were going to we had done about 20 VHS videos, that we were going to digitize them, put them online, put them in a subscription format, $25 a month. And we charged that much because we had somebody who was working for us who was a student, and he said, I would sort of question any credit card bill that's over $25. So that was our whole market research. And then this is our really attractive website, and our e-commerce was send us a check to our P.O. box. So, we took a poll amongst us, how many people do you think will subscribe? And we were used to popularity. My books had been really successful. The school had been really successful. The VHS tapes had sold really well. So we took a poll, and no one guessed right because no one guessed low enough, because the first month, 30 people subscribed. The first year, 1,000 people subscribed. Meanwhile, we were just being pummeled by the downturn in the economy. We had to close our school. We were doing all kinds of consulting and conferences and just everything we could. And so in 2004, this was the size of our team. And some of them, I'm very proud to say, are still with us. But every time that we would hit 1,000 members, we would celebrate with a cake. And I found this picture of our 7,000 cake. And when we hit 100,000, which happened probably about 5 or 6 years ago, probably 6 years ago, we took our whole company. At that time, we were over 100 people to Disneyland with their families, and it was a huge celebration. So we did a little bit more than just a cake. But today, 2014, we have over 600 employees, over 4 million members, and I want to talk a little bit about our business model. So when a lot of people are talking, there are a lot of free videos on the internet, right? But I think we're all learning free isn't free. What gets sold when something is free? Your private data is what gets sold. And we're all experiencing the aftermath of that, and I don't even think we really understand the enormity of it. And there's a lot of controversy about data collecting around personal information, education. I would, stand here and say that that is a controversial topic. Also, a lot of free can't pay contributors. So lynda.com pays all of its contributors. Many of our authors earn more than they earn teaching in school or, writing books or anything else. That we curate, we pick the best top teachers. That's really important to us. That we practice actual teaching pedagogy. A lot of people will say to me, I watch a lot of free videos, but lynda.com videos are really different. And that is because we have a pedagogy, which I will describe. And that we've invested not only, that because we didn't have, we weren't funded by VC, we were able to reinvest our profits back into our product, back into our people, and even into our community, which I'll talk about at the end. So our teaching principles are what, where, when, why, how, right? Kind of like when you learn how to write. Most importantly, show me, don't tell me. Give me context, explain all the technical terms, chunk it into small searchable bites of information, and approach topics in lots of directions. You might be teaching PowerPoint, but you also need to understand how to present, how to tell a story, how to use color, how to put in a photo, how to do a video, how to use typography. There are lots of other skills. It's a holistic process learning. It's not just about one narrow topic. And so I know last year your conference was all about MOOCs, and to me, MOOCs are emulating a classroom. And lynda.com isn't emulating a classroom. We see ourselves as a resource library. We see ourselves as a complement to in-person education. And what happens in a library? In a class, you're all listening to me. If you were thinking about, some problem at home, you tuned out, you missed part of what I said. If you've already heard a story, you might have glossed over it. When you're in a library, you might pull 5 books down. You might read a sentence from one, a paragraph from another. Nobody's going to test you on what you learned in the library. It's just a really different paradigm. it's a paradigm of abundance. It's a paradigm of self-directed learning. And also, it's a paradigm of serendipity where you might go for one book and then realize, oh, I really want to learn about that too, and reach for a book to the right or to the left. So some of the benefits of video, that you can replay it, you can rewatch it. If you were tuning out in a lecture, you can go back, you can find that information. Really important that it's anonymous, that you can, nobody's watching you, nobody's judging you. Searchable, mixable, the idea that you can mash up, you do your own mashup. That's what people are doing. That's our modern day word for what people do in libraries, is they mash up information and resources. And that is faster to market. So getting back to just the vision for the future of education, obviously we're hearing a ton about the skills gap in America. And if we look at what the top jobs in 2014 are, some of it we're well aware of: software developers and research and analysts and training specialists and financial analysts and physical therapists, web developers, logisticians, database administrators, petroleum engineers. How many of you are training people to be petroleum engineers in here? Okay, I've got a couple, maybe less than 1% of the room. So then let's look at jobs that didn't exist 10 years ago. App developers, market research, all of those things that were on that list, plus some other ones. I love the millennial generational expert. Now, I graduated from college 40 years ago. Had I just been trained to fill all the skills that were popular back then, where would I be today? Is that really the approach? I hear all this talk, everything should be STEM, and we're failing here and we're ranking here. Let's look at what employers think are the top skills. So this is from Forbes. Sense-making, making sense of things, social intelligence, novel and adaptive thinking, cross-cultural competencies, empathy, computational thinking, new media literacy, transdisciplinary, design mindset, cognitive load management. I had to look that up. That means you can juggle your Facebook and your email at the same time. And virtual collaboration. Okay, so of those, 2 of them have to do slightly with skills that you could teach, right? The rest are soft skills. If we look at the job outlook from the National Association of Colleges and Employers, verbally communicate, work in a team structure, make decisions and solve problems, plan, organize, and prioritize work, obtain and process information, analyze quantitative data, technical knowledge related to the job, there we have one, proficiency with computer software, another, create, edit, and write, sell, or influence others. So of that, I can think of 3 that have to do with very specific skills that you might teach. So, to me, we're coming out of a very scary period of time that collided with the internet age. The internet age is freedom, information's everywhere. It's up to you. Figure out what you want to learn, what you want to think about, what you want to study. And this very rigid way of measuring learning, which has to do with either we're all supposed to get top scores, every single one of us, including the kids like Lynda, who were abused and abandoned and neglected and completely disenfranchised, that schools are going to be funded, the ones that score the best on these standardized tests. And Common Core, which I think has really good intentions, but is being very poorly implemented, partially because it is focused on a standardized way of measuring. So there is a difference between education and learning. Education is something that we do. It's something that we hope and think and pray will actually impart knowledge. Learning is a really personal thing. Learning happens when it happens. Sometimes it happens in school, sometimes it happens out of school. And there's also a really big difference between memorization, which is what a lot of this rote testing actually measures, versus memorialization, which is what you can do in a lecture, put it on the internet, watch TED Talks, watch lynda.com, watch YouTube, all these different amazing resources. My personal passion around in-person learning has to do with project-based learning. And what project-based learning means is it means open-ended problems for which there is no right answer, contextual problem solving and skill building, the opportunity to develop and exercise critical thinking, and building confidence on accomplishments, not comparisons, not how you rank according to everybody else, but if you are personally growing and evolving. And to me, the role of the teacher is really changing and needs to change from the sage on the stage, from the person who knows all the information and, it's all in here and you just listen to me and you'll learn it, to offering something that cannot happen online, human connection and feedback. We are all starving for it. That's why you're here. That's what's so important. You're talking to colleagues. Our way that we talk to each other and process information cannot be emulated online. Oxytocin, serotonin, all these hormones that we emit when we actually get together. And you are in the most important position of mentorship, to actually get to know your students. Instead of standing on stage and lecturing and being the sage on the stage, you have the most important role in their life that no one online can do. Lynda.com's not doing it. If we look at the learning pyramid, 10% learn through lecture and reading. 20, it gets a little better with audio-visual demonstration. Okay, Lynda.com's in that, maybe if you're generous, top 30% what we do. You guys are in the bottom. You're allowing people to have discussions, to practice doing, to even present to each other and teach others. That's how you really learn. That's the opportunity that school offers students. There's a 70-20 framework that was created by the Center for Creative Leadership, and it talks about how they have assessed that most people learn 70% from life, from just the tough jobs, the tough knocks, 20% from your boss or your teacher or your mentor, and 10% from courses and learning. Okay, that's where Lynda.com is, in that 10 to 30%. And I'm not saying it to put ourselves down. I love what we do. I'm proud of it. I think it's incredibly effective and wonderful. But we have to figure out what's better done in person and what's better done online, and do what's better done in person. And so I saw a really inspiring lecture the other day, and it was about how to be ready to get a job. You have to have a standout resume. You have to know how to network, be good at social media, be great at interview skills, be able to research, write a wonderful cover letter, know a little bit of design, stand out from everybody else, work on your LinkedIn profile, have confidence, be able to speak to an adult, be able to speak with confidence, know how to negotiate your salary. Are you guys teaching this stuff? Because this could actually integrate into any topic that you're teaching. You can send your students out to go to networking events and make that one of the requirements that they have to do. You could ask them to come and present in class and build their confidence. You could ask them to work in teams so that they learn how to work together. This is a much better thing to be doing than giving them the lecture and being the sage on the stage. This is actually going to change the conversation from what do I need to take to pass the test to what do I want to learn so that I can get a job and be a contributing member of society. So just a few things about my crazy life. I said we also invest in our community. So Lynda.com contributes to, we are sponsors, key sponsors in Santa Barbara of both the local film festival and the local arts and lectures program from UCSB. And so I end up meeting all these amazing people. And I met Jennifer Lawrence. And so she said, I never knew I was good at anything. I was bad in school until I discovered acting. And I have this freak ability, and I realized that I'm really good at something. So, not everybody's going to grow up to be a scientist or a technologist or a mathematician. That's not the only kind of job out there. I'm not, she is, of course, a freak. But what I loved was she didn't know she was good at anything, and I didn't know I was good at anything until I taught. And I think a lot of us, until we find that thing, we don't know what it is. I also had the amazing experience to meet Yo-Yo Ma because he performed. And he actually gave a talk about his life. And he played this absolutely incredible Bach cello study that was the prelude. And I could play it for you, but I'm running out of time, but you would all know it. And it brought everybody to tears. It was, he has this ability to just emote with his cello like nobody else. And he said, when he was done, this is the first piece of music I ever learned. My father taught this to me 4 notes at a time. I had to learn every day 4 notes at a time. And then I realized on day 3 that a note got repeated. And so I thought, I was really getting away with something because I only had to learn 3 notes that day. And, this idea that you can learn anything 4 notes at a time, that is our job as educators, to break stuff down and help people learn. I had the most amazing experience of all the famous people that I've met to meet Gloria Steinem. She came and she spoke at Arts and Lectures in Santa Barbara, and I got to meet her at a dinner. And when I met her, she said, so many people have told me I need to meet you. Why is that? I was like, oh. You know, maybe it's because I own Lynda.com, and I started to tell her about it, and she said, wow, you solved a problem that we couldn't solve at Ms. Magazine, because you charge an affordable price, and you're able to pay your contributors, and you're not dependent on advertising. And that was the bane of our existence, that we couldn't really do objective journalism because we needed advertisers. And she said, I totally know why people wanted me to meet you. And in fact, if next time you come to New York, will you have coffee with me? I was like, sure. So I had that coffee with Gloria, and we had the most amazing conversation. It was like we'd been best friends forever. And at the end of a 3-hour breakfast, she said to me, I'm going to Africa to celebrate my 80th birthday in Botswana to ride elephants. And one of my best friends dropped out. Would you take her place? So talk about a full circle moment, right? So my husband's this amazing photographer, and I never take pictures. So I said, I want to point and shoot, figure out the best one. I'm going to Africa. You don't say no to Gloria when she invites you to Africa. So I really never take pictures, but these are some of the pictures that I took with my point and shoot. This is me riding the elephant. I did it. And here I am with Gloria on her 80th birthday. And she said to me, she gave me a big hug, and she said, Lynda, you are such a gift to me. You've accomplished something that I could never accomplish. You created a business, you scaled it, you paid your contributors. I admire you so much. And I just said, I'm standing on your shoulders. Like, I couldn't have done this without you. And it was just the most unbelievable, beautiful exchange and experience. And some of the extra bonuses from that, because that is contextual learning. I never wanted to be a photographer. My husband's the good photographer. I took these great photos. I got really excited about, photography. Now I'm getting a DSLR. I'm going on Lynda.com, learning all this photography stuff. I want to take my husband on photo safaris. And so what is that? That's contextual and experiential learning. That was learning. I wasn't in school, but that was learning. So for me, the takeaways: help your students find their true passion. Explain to them that they can search until they find it, that maybe their first job out of school isn't going to be it, but to just keep searching. Help them find what they're really good at, and encourage practice. This whole idea of teach to the test, get the good grade on the test, it's not what life is about. The people who are really good at things, they practice, they work at it hard, they work at it long. Unfortunately, our whole school system is not geared to impart that lesson, that very important lesson. Solve real problems, add real value. Never stop learning, say yes more often. I said yes to Gloria. It was really scary, but I went. So at Lynda.com, we say content is queen. What we mean by content is we mean that kind of memorialized lectures that have all that right teaching pedagogy. For Halloween a couple of years ago, I was queen of content. And if I could stand up here with my magic wand and wave it over all of you, first of all, I would thank you, because you're in the trenches. You're doing the most important job in the world, which is to be the mentor to people, change their lives, help them learn these skills. I'm grateful to you. Our entire country should be grateful to you. You are underappreciated, undervalued. You are my heroes. And if I've inspired you to teach a little bit differently, I think I've done my job. And I'm ready for Q&A. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think there are mics, I heard, and because it's being recorded, we want the questions to come through the mics, so go stand up on the sides. And also, before anybody goes to one, I just want to say, unfortunately, my husband's parents are having their 50th anniversary today, so I have to fly out of here when my lecture is done. But my colleague, Lori Burris, if you don't mind standing, who a lot of you know, who teaches at Pasadena City College, is here to take questions after I have to fly out. So, yes.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I wanted to take you back to your evergreen days. You and I are about the same age, and I went to UC Santa Cruz in the 70s, where like you, I had no grades, and there were only written evaluations, and it really changed my life and changed the way I go about things. And yet today, we are not in that era. We are in the era of big data. We are in the area of accountability and numbers and things. And I just wanted some reflections, if you have any, about how people like us can survive under these pressures. You mentioned, no child left behind. I didn't want to say it yesterday, but the Obama administration's plan is not that much different,
no,
really.
It's the same. It's the same.
And we need to get away from numbers, excuse me, mathematicians, just a little bit, and try to get back to some of the things that you were talking about today. And I am frustrated myself.
I think I'm frustrated too. We have to stand up. We have to, a lot of times change happens from the bottom up, not the top down. I totally agree that, we've been really under the same policy as far as education goes for the last over a decade now. And I think that's why you're all my heroes. I don't know how you do it. I think, unfortunately, it's sort of taking the creativity out of teaching, the respect out of teaching. And there are still, ways that you're going to just have to sneaker net in some of these subversive ideas, like helping people be ready for their jobs, right? Very subversive. So thank you for bringing that up. But, there are movements against this standardized testing. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Diane Rabbit. She's not really a pro ed tech at all, but she's very anti. She was actually one of the policymakers for No Child Left Behind and has come out with a wonderful book called Reign of Error, which talks about how it's a failed policy, how harmful it is to teachers, how harmful it is to students. So it's really interesting that she was one of the creators of it and really did a flip. She's a polarizing person. Not everybody loves her, but I think her book is really good, and she has a whole movement against standardized testing that's really gaining a lot of momentum. So I do support that. Yes?
Good morning. You've scaled a lot of videos, and I saw on your slide you had text transcripts. How do you build that into your, courses? Who do you use as outside sources, or do you do it in-house?
No, we have an outside transcription company, and then we have an internal group that reads through, because they get about 90% of it right, so 10% of it is wrong. And so we have another group that kind of combs through what comes back in the automated fashion and corrects the nomenclature and the grammar and the spelling, hopefully. I mean, we still probably don't get it 100% perfectly. And it's an investment, but I'll tell you, it isn't just for the hearing impaired. It's for search. It makes your SEO go through the roof. It makes being able to figure out where within a video something is contained. And so it's, even though it is an extra layer of expense and effort, we would never go back. We're huge believers in the power of our transcripts. So great question. Yes?
Thank you. You mentioned that your students don't need to take notes because the handouts are, in effect, comprehensive. Have you run into any problems with students with different learning styles, maybe not really getting the handouts?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is less of an issue. The reason why I brought up the handout issue was because it was a precursor to being so excited about the medium of video, because video is, in a sense, the best kind of note you could have, because you can go back and rewatch it. And so much of when you teach computer technology, people don't know the words, they don't know where something's located on a menu. It's very visual. And so it's not, and I totally agree, there are different learning styles, and some people would tell me, I have to write notes or I won't learn this. And so I would let them. It wasn't like I would prevent it. I just didn't believe that that was the best way that they would learn. But you're totally right that people learn all different ways. Okay, I don't see anybody else. Mike, are there any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much.